If you don't understand this rule, you are reading the Quran incorrectly without realizing it. Today, I will fix that. In this lesson, we are learning something very powerful in Tajweed Maddah, the stretching of sound. First, you need to understand this symbol, sukun. This symbol is called sukun. A letter that had a sukun is called sakin letter. Means that since waw has sukun on it, here waw now is sakin. And here too, ya, this is Arabic letter ya, it has sukun on it. So it is called ya sakin. So here we have waw sakin. Why do we call it waw sakin? Because there is sukun on the waw. This is sukun and here is waw. So it is called waw sakin, meaning it is silent. Now in Arabic, there are three special letters that stretch the sound. These are called letters of Maddah. There is alif, waw, and ya. These letters are called letters of Maddah because they stretch a sound. But they don't always stretch the sound. They only stretch under specific conditions. Each Maddah letter depends on the vowel before it. If there is fatha before alif, here is alif. And if there is fatha before the alif, then you now stretch the sound. For example, here we have ba fatha ba. But since here we have alif and fatha comes before the alif, that means this alif is alif madda. So you now stretch the ba. Here you will not say ba anymore. You will read it as ba fatha alif mad ba, ba fatha alif madda ba. So the same case here. If there is a dhamma before waw, here is waw sakin. A waw sakin means waw that has sukun on it. So if there is dhamma that comes before the waw sakin, you will stretch the sound here too. For example, here is badu mabu. But since there is dhamma that comes before the waw sakin, you will now stretch the bu. You will not say bu anymore. You will stretch it to bu. So in this case too, if there is kasra before ya sakin, this is ya sakin. Here is ya and it has sukun on it. So it is called ya sakin. So if there is kasra that comes before that ya sakin, here is kasra. The kasra comes before ya sakin. Means that here too, you stretch the sound. It will become b. You stretch it to 1 second. So these are the rules. First, the rule number one is that if there is fatha that comes before the alif, we will stretch the sound to 1 second. If there is dhamma that comes before the waw sakin, here too there will be a stretch to 1 second. And here too, if there is kasra that comes before the ya sakin, here too you stretch it to 1 second. So now that you understand the rules, let's apply it step by step to the Arabic letters. Repeat after me. We will now read it as ba fatha alif madda ba, ba dhamma bu, waw sukun bu, ba kasra bi, ya sukun bi, ba bu bi, ta fatha alif madda ta, ta dhamma tu, waw sukun tu, ta kasra ti, ya sukun ti, ta tu ti. You will understand that here we didn't read it as ta. We say ta because there is alif madda here. The same here, we didn't read it as tu. We say tu because there is waw sukun here and dhamma comes before the waw sukun. So you will have to stretch it to 1 second. The same here. We didn't say ta kesra t. We didn't leave it as t. We say t because when kasra comes before yas sakin, you will stretch it to 1 second. MashaAllah. Tha fatiha alif mad. Tha dhamma thu. Waw sukun thu. Tha kasra thi. Ya sukun thi. Tha thu thi. Jim fatha alif madda ja. Jim doma ju. Waw sukun ju. Jim kasra ji. Ya sukun ji. Ja. Ju. Ji. Ha fatha alif mad ha. Ha doma hu. Waw sukun hu. Ha kasra hi. Ya sukun hi. Ha. Hu. Hi. Kha fatha alif mad kha. Kha doma khu. Waw sukun khu. Kha kasra khi. Ya sukun khi. Kha. Khu. Khi. Dal fatha alif mad da. Dal dhamma du. Waw sukun du. Dal kasra di. Ya sukun di. Da. Du. Di. Zal fatha alif mad za. Zal dhamma zu. Waw sukun zu. Zal kasra zi. Ya sukun zi. Za. Zu. Zi. MashaAllah. Ra fatha alif mad ra. Ra dhamma ru. Waw sukun ru. Ra kasra ri. Waw sukun ri. Ra. Ru. Ri. Za fatha alif mad za. Zal doma zu. Waw sukun zu. Zal kasra zi. Ya sukun zi. Za. Zu. Zi. MashaAllah. So here as we say, you will not read it as za. No, you will have to stretch it to 1 second. Za. The same here, you will not read it as zu. You will have to stretch it to 1 second. Zu. Because there is dhamma that comes before the waw sakin. So there is waw madda here. There is stretching here. Here too, you will not read it as z. You will have to stretch it to 1 second as z. Why? Because kasra comes before waw sakin. MashaAllah. Sin fatha alif mad sa. Sin doma su. Waw sukun su. sin kasra si, ya sukun si, sa, su, si, shin fatha, alif mad, sha, shin doma shu, waw sukun shu, shin kasra shi, ya sukun shi, sha, shu, shi, sod fatia, alif mad, so, so doma su, waw sukun su, so kasra sui, ya sukun sui, so, su, sui, dod fatia, alif mad, do, dod doma du, waw sukun du, dod kasra di, ya sukun di, do, du, di. MashaAllah. Ba fatia, alif mad, ba, ba doma du, waw sukun du, ba kasra di, ya sukun di, ba, du, di. Dha fatia, alif mad, dha, dha doma dhu, waw sukun dhu, dha kasra dhi, ya sukun dhi, dha, dhu, dhi. MashaAllah. Ain fatia, alif mad, a, ain kasra ru, waw sukun ru, ain kasra ri, ya sukun ri, a, ru, ri. MashaAllah. So here, because there is alif mad here, you will stretch it to 1 second, it will now become a. And here, because dhamma comes before waw sakin, so you will now read it, you will stretch it, you will stretch the sound of ru to 1 second, it will now be ru. So same here, since kasra comes before ya sakin, you will now read it as ri, you will have to stretch it to 1 second, it will now be ri. MashaAllah. Ghain fatia, alif mad, gha, ghain dhamma gu, waw sukun gu, ghain kasra ghi, ya sukun ghi, gha, ghu, ghi. Fa fatha, alif mad, fa, fa dhamma fu, waw sukun fu, fa kasra fi, ya sukun fi, fa, fu, fi. MashaAllah. You will not read it as fa, you will stretch it to 1 second because there is alif mad here. It will now be fa. Here too, you will now read it as fu. You will have to stretch it to 1 second because dhamma comes before the waw sakin. So it will now be fu. Here too, you will now read it as fi. Why? Because kasra comes before the ya sakin. So you will now read it as fi. Qaf fatia, alif mad, qa, qaf dhamma qu, waw sukun qu, qaf kasra qi, Ya sukun ki, ko, ku, ki. MashaAllah. Kaf fatia, alif mad, ka. Kaf dhamma ku, waw sukun ku. Kaf kasra ki, ya sukun ki, ka, ku, ki. Lam fatha, alif mad, la. Lam dhamma lu, waw sukun lu. Lam kasra li, ya sukun li. La, lu, li. Mim fatha, alif mad, ma. Mim dhamma mu, waw sukun mu. Mim kasra mi, ya sukun mi. Ma, mu, mi. MashaAllah. Nun fatia, alif mad, na. Nun dhamma nu, waw sukun nu. Nun kasra ni, ya sukun ni. Na, nu, ni. MashaAllah. So here it means that had it been there was no alif mad here, had it been it was only nun fatia na here, we will now read it as na. But because there is alif mad, you will stretch it to 1 second, it will now become na. The same here. Had it been it was only nun with dhamma, you will read it as nu. Since there is dhamma that comes before waw sakin, and waw is one of the huruf al-mad, you now read it as nu. So, and the same here, had it been here it was only nun kasra ni, you read it as ni, ni. But since there is huruf al-mad here and kasra comes before ya sakin, so you now stretch it to 1 second. It will now be ni. MashaAllah. Waw fatiha, alif mad, wa. Waw dhamma wu, waw sukun wu. Waw kasra wi, ya sukun wi. Wa, wu, wi. Ha fatia, alif mad, ha. Ha dhamma hu, waw sukun hu. Ha kasra hi, ya sukun hi. Ha, hu, hi. Hamza, vertical fatha, a. Why do you call it Hamza here? Because there is fatha. This is vertical fatha. So if there is a straight line like this and no fatha on it, no dhamma, no kasra, no sukun, you call it alif. But if it has either fatha or sukun or kasra or dhamma, you will not call it alif, you will call it Hamza. So here Hamza, vertical fatha, a. Hamza dhamma u, waw sukun u. Hamza kasra i. Do not forget, I call it Hamza because it has kasra. Here too I call it Hamza because it has dhamma, and here too I call it Hamza because it has fatha, which is a vertical fatha. So had it been there was no fatha or sukun or kasra or dhamma attached to the alif, you will call it alif. But here you call it Hamza because it has a haraka attached to it, which is kasra here. Hamza kasra i, ya sukun I, A, U, I. Ya Fatiha, Alif Mad, Ya. Ya Dhamma, Yu. Waw Sukun, Yu. Ya Kasra, Yi. Ya Sukun, Yi. Ya, Yu, Yi. Alhamdulillah, we have come to the end of the lesson 7. If you benefited, kindly like, share, and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next lesson. Type lesson 8 in the comment section so I know you are ready. Jazakumullahu khairan.